many companies get excited about the big thing. By doing this handful of material things, they can unlock massive value. They also can have massive failure too. But what often gets overlooked is the small set of things, from a handful of changes to their website, to sending email with a better headline, more compelling content, more personalized content as an example. But doing the small changes can, over time, be just as material as doing a material thing. And then learning from all those changes, both material and small, is probably the most important thing.
That was our guest today, Arun Arora. Arun is a partner at McKinsey Company and has over 25 years experience helping clients transform their business and overall customer experience by harnessing the power of technology. In this episode, Arun talks with us about the changing nature of digital transformation in the 2020s and beyond, including how digitisation will empower people to do their best work, why people need to focus on continuous learning to succeed in a fully digitised organisation, and how organisations can adapt to the changing digital landscape. I hope you enjoy this episode with Arun Arora. Arun, thank you so much for being here with us today on Digital Mindfulness. It's a real pleasure to have you on the show, and I, for one, am fascinated to learn what you and the team really consider to be the key pillars of digitisation and responsible innovation for this year and going forward. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lawrence. Happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
So Arun, I wonder if you would just introduce yourself to the audience. Tell us a little bit more about the work that you're doing over there at McKinsey, and in particular, how you came to be focusing on this specific area of the shifting impact of digitisation.
Happy to. For 25 prior years, before coming to McKinsey, I'd worked in technology as a technology executive at Apple, Groupon, Staples, and then in my last company as CEO. And in each of the companies that I was in, digital became a progressively both more important part of the business, tended to be the fastest growing part of the business, but also it also was synonymous with where the majority of new customer acquisition was taking place, particularly in the businesses that I ran that had a large retail footprint. So the implication of digital became a bigger part of my career, but never ever consistent part of my career over the past 25 years. And then I have been at the firm now 4 years in Chicago, Madrid, and Paris, solely focused on digital transformations focused on revenue acceleration. So how do you help clients really take the assets they have and accelerate them materially, or help them create a digital business and then accelerate it thereafter?
That's great. So over the course of your career, you've really been witness to the growth and the massive impact that these technologies have had on society and on businesses.
Yeah, and I certainly see all the conflict that comes with it. If you have a very store-based footprint of your business prior, how do you think about digital, the conflict it may represent, or how do you collaborate with the digital part of your enterprise and get the best of the two, and then really, unlock it for the customer's benefit. So there's some natural both tension involved, but also some real opportunity if done right.
So Arun, you've recently published a new book called Fast Times: How Digital Winners Set Direction, Learn and Adapt. And I really want to dive deeper into this book, and in particular, tell us what the main premise is of this book and why it's so important, especially now.
I think that, first is, I'll say that why the book is important is what it does is help companies that are on their own journey of finding revenue and revenue acceleration or new customer acquisition. How do they learn from the best companies that have done this well, either in their own sectors or frankly find inspiration in other sectors? So the book really is using these best-in-class cases about how, for any one of 18 different topics, how you can find your own nuggets of wisdom across it. And then really meant to be thought-provoking, because for each chapter we have a structure where if it's not relevant for you and we ask a question and if you clearly are answering in the affirmative, don't read it. Read what's relevant for you, but truly read it. And so when I think about the structuring of the book, what the theme of it is, what does it mean to be fast in this age? How do you we know that change will never be this slow again. How do you win with this as a backdrop, knowing that, if you think your challenges today are hard, tomorrow they're actually harder in digital. When we think about, we have this phrase of, to go fast, you actually have to slow down. You have to be very thoughtful about how you sequence the activities you do to maximize the impact, but also to be more honestly tangible. The implication of slowing down is, are you doing the things that have the highest value, highest impact? And do your teams have the capabilities of executing against those? And that sounds simple in theory. In practice, it actually is quite hard. And the book helps you problem solve through these case examples about how other companies have taken that challenge on and have succeeded at it, but also sharing a little bit of their bumps and bruises along the way.
And I think even talking about impact, looking at the design of the book, which is something you spoke about initially, even the design of the book is tailored towards helping people getting the most out of the ideas within it extremely quickly.
Yeah, because if you think about a normal 250-page book, the challenge is that's just a lot of content for a person on a plane when they have work to do, between meetings, when they get home. How do we help them self-guide their own journey of learning to what's really relevant for them? So that's the first thing. We wanted to make it efficient. Two is we were very deliberate about making that efficient through really using the book as a dialogue and very practically setting up each chapter as a question. If you can answer in the affirmative, we don't want you to read it. If you're already doing it well, you don't have to read it because we wrote it. We'd rather you read what's relevant for you. And if it's relevant, hopefully the cases then help you, inspire you, guide you to unlocking that value that you're seeking. But it was very deliberate, including the design of the book, not just the structure of how the chapters are laid out, but the actual design. This is a McKinsey by McKinsey book. We are very proud of the fact that this is entirely designed, written by teams of experts and partners.
Arun, the book is structured into 3 core pillars, which are strategy, capabilities, and adoption and scaling. And I wonder if you can talk to that a little bit more. And in particular, why it was those 3 pillars that you chose to focus on as the core elements of digitization now?
Yeah. So if you think about the first one, strategy, the idea of one of the hardest things for a company is everyone says, just go fast. Why aren't you going fast enough? Why aren't the results better? And the challenge they have is that by going fast without stepping back, saying, what is my ambition? Why should it be bigger? Why is it not? Why are we not unlocking a bigger ambition? Speed for speed's sake is actually useful for a short period of time, but never replicable. If you're not stepping back and saying, what, I have unique assets and skills here. My ambition should be much higher. How now do I set this journey to allow me to unlock that? And knowing that I need these other capabilities to unlock the next set. So thinking really critically about the journey you're about to go on, saying with these skills, I can only get so far, but if I get these next set of skills, my ambition could be much higher. And then being deliberate about going off and finding those skills. So in the strategy section, what is as much as your ambition, but how to slow down to really maximize the journey ahead. As we talk about scaling, I'm just going to the other end for a second. If you think about many companies get excited about the big thing. By doing this handful of material things, they can unlock massive value. They also can have massive failure too. But what often gets overlooked is the small set of things, from a handful of changes to their website, to sending email with a better headline, more compelling content, more personalized content as an example. But doing the small changes can, over time, be just as material as doing a material thing. And then learning from all those changes, both material and small, is probably the most important thing. So the scaling to me is, as much as you create the learning platform, how can you continue the learning journey as you scale, but also if you have a business that really has embraced this, how do you then spread that across the organization to unlock the next potential through expanding learning, how to think about the setting up the sequencing. So to me, it's when I think about separating strategy from scaling, stepping back and making sure you have the right sequencing, the right set of capabilities, or if not, how to acquire them. How is your ambition big enough? One of the biggest challenges of all my interactions in the last many years has been our client's ambition is too low. And then at the other end, if it's too low, then scaling it tends to be, you're scaling something that is going too fast for something that will achieve too low of an outcome. So lining all these pieces up actually takes real work. But the payoffs, at least as evidenced by the examples of the book, can be very, very profound.
One of the key elements of the book was the focus on people. And you mentioned how people really are perhaps the most important element of successful digitization going forward. So I wonder if you can just talk to that a little bit more and why that was such a core element of the book.
100%. Like one of the principles, if we acknowledge that technology for technology's sake doesn't evolve itself, it needs people to help guide it, nurture it, learn and apply from other tests. At the heart of all this is people. And one of the principles of the book is this idea of, have you made failing safe? Is it safe to fail? In my prior life and in a lot of the work in my current life, the reality is that most organizations, it's not safe to fail. So if you think about it's not safe to fail, that means you're probably learning at a very modest level. If you're learning at a modest level, you probably won't be able to achieve that larger ambition you might have deemed in the strategy piece that's possible. So if you then do make it safe to fail, so now people within reason are doing tests on various, putting experiments on the website of what's commonly known as A/B testing that allow you to learn, do people react to this color or this headline or this imagery as examples. And as you start learning and applying, what happens is people get very engaged in their job. That people want to learn. People really want to contribute and drive impact. And so by unlocking learning and making it continuous and unending, the idea that culture is impacted by this, because people, once they taste it, they want to be engaged. They want to be appreciated. They want to contribute. But it has to be safe to fail. And so to me, culture is a very big part of all this, because at the heart of all this is people.
And from then on, you go on to say that learning and capacity building are the most important pillars to acquire after that.
If you think about there's many different ways, this war for talent, the shortfall of data scientists, that's like 250,000 in the US alone. You can't disregard the fact that organic hiring is hard, or very hard. It may not be impossible in some cases, but you may have a workforce that has high capability, but needs to be retrained. So the idea of how do you train your existing workforce in a highly competitive marketplace for talent, and then acquire as possible the new skills as well to help as much seed, but also integrate well and become one team. The workforce and the retraining to become the next generation type workforce that we're talking about in the implications of the book, it goes back to the people part. People don't want to have roles that ultimately lead to outplacement. They want roles where they can contribute, and that means it's sort of lifelong learning embedded based on good performance. That's, I think, a reasonable expectation of people.
We've spoken earlier about the breadth of your career and just how much you must have seen in terms of technological transformation. And I'm wondering whether you can talk about whether the transformation that companies are going through now is any different to that which the other companies you worked with, such as Apple and Groupon, whether it's any different to that.
Totally. One principle jumps to mind. When people in the past did transformations, it was treated like a project. There's a beginning and end date. And that idea of an end date, so after this transformation is done and we achieve some level of success, we move on to something else, and then this thing is then left to continue or, maybe even die. The biggest part of the change, as I looked at the companies that I was part of or ran, the reality is that a digital customer, digital revenue is not a project. You don't have a digital business for a period of time and then stop it. It is continuous now. So like the principles of continuous improvement, always on, it is part of the fabric of the organization. So when people embark on a digital acceleration transformation now, I see the biggest changes. This is the new way of working. This is the new normal. It is continuous and it's not ending. And I think that is so different than 15 even years ago. Because, satisfying people's digital needs, you could do it with an email and be done with it. 25 years ago today, that would not be acceptable. You would not have a business.
There are a lot of books on digital transformation in the market now, and I'm wondering if that you just mentioned, the whole thing about continuous improvement, continuous learning, whether it's that sets the book that you've just published, Fast Times, whether it's that sets it apart from the other competitors on the market.
As it wouldn't be fair to talk about any competitor book. What I'll say about our book,
course, yeah.
what I really, as a biased author in this, what we really try to do was create a book that allowed a reader, a CEO, a CXO, a leader of an organization, to ask themselves some very structured in our book, around 18 questions, as they read the book, to help them guide them through where they see their own opportunities or problems, and help them learn from it. It's very much like in the specific word that comes to mind every time I read the book. We want to have a dialogue with the reader through the book, which seems inherently as an asymmetric topic, because it's a book. How can you have a dialogue? Mm-hmm. But the fact that we specifically have questions, we specifically want it to be self-guided based on where they have needs, and so that they can take away what they need to take away, versus forcing them to learn, a set of frameworks that drive them to, a bunch of end-to-end content that isn't really isn't very practical for them to separate what I need today. What do I need a month from today? So how do we make it both very useful today, or in a month from today, or 6 months from today, but not theoretical and self-guided, and so that they can have their own dialogue based on the book. It is not meant to be read end to end. It is meant to be self-guided, and that's, I think, as much an innovation in the format as the intent. The intent. I would feel terrible if someone read, the book end to end, but didn't appreciate that this was self-directed. This really was a guiding principle of the book.
For me, I would very much consider myself to be an end-to-end reader, but I do appreciate how, for other people, and also myself sometimes, it's really useful, say on my commute, to just dip into the book and pick out the most relevant things and then apply that learning while I'm at work.
Yeah. Or let it be the basis of a dialogue with your colleagues, and use that as a basis to say, could we do better, or are we doing better?
Arun, in the beginning of the book, one of the key things that you talk about is speed, and how important it is to apply speed, especially when we're talking about digital businesses now. But what do you think of the idea now that to use speed, particularly in the world of digital, that there are actually more risks associated with speed, particularly with things related to unintended consequences? Do you think that there's an inherent risk in applying speed to digital transformation?
Yeah, I can see the base of the question. But let me throw out some challenges on it. The idea of speed, when done right, is amazing. When speed is done, amazingly well, it is profound. But part of the problem, and I'll describe a client situation. There's a client in Europe who they were materially behind their targets. They had a digital program that was, going okay, but they didn't understand why, and they didn't step back to say, why is it just okay? When presented with learning for opportunities from in the telco space or in consumer retail, the traditional wisdom was it's not applicable for us. Turns out many of those examples were 100% applicable for them. So as we both step back and help them stop a set of activities so they could focus on the things that drove value, the prioritization, the decision making, the inherent worry that they didn't have the capabilities slowed them down. But the edict across many was go fast. Come on now, we have all these things, go fast. But they didn't know how to unlock them to go fast. So people were doing many more things and actually driving negative customer engagement. So fast didn't turn into impact. Fast actually turned into negative impact. And after a handful of months, the client is now 100% over plan. They understand the challenge of sequencing, and the biggest challenge of sequencing is talent and capabilities. So what would have been just go fast and do more with what you have, the reality is that the program is now overachieving results. But to do truly, a next step function, they need a different, same implications for their talent pool. So do I think that stepping back, it can have unintended consequences? I mean, in this case, we stopped collectively. They were spending money on things that didn't drive impact. So the positive impact, they saved money. They started reducing their negative customer experience. And by investing some of that money back in talent, both in their own capabilities and hiring a few, the reality is they started unlocking their own next S-curve. So the real positive of all this is that, there's a new foundation beginning for them as they've already achieved the first one.
So Arun, as we enter into this brand new decade and people go out to buy the book, what would you say the first things that people should consider when they think about applying some of the principles that we've been speaking about?
I'll share with you what I told a friend who's a CEO. I encouraged him to, when he gets the book, to step back and read the questions of all 18 chapters. And then map that to the homework that I encourage him before he even does that, which is what are the things he thinks they're good at, and what are the areas he thinks that they need to improve upon. And so when the two lists are together between his own list of internal view and the book's questions, then read the ones that are most appropriate. I'm trying to steer him to not read it end to end, but really apply it and personalize it to what he needs to get out of it. And then when he has time to read the rest of it, but not till he has time. And then once he has been thoughtful, and then to share it openly with his team. Like, we have these opportunities. Here's some ideas that came out of this book. We have these challenges. Here are some ideas that came out of this book. Let's talk about it. Like, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Yeah, they have a situation today where they have almost 100 KPIs. That's practically impossible to manage. How do they have just a handful that they can actually manage and steer the business? I know that's going to be a topic of his, and I know it's a question in the book that we raise about how can you effectively steer and manage your business. So I believe he's already made his list. So now I'm anxious to see him get the book and make the energy to map the two and then read accordingly. But then the biggest thing to share it so that they start the dialogue internally.
Arun, in the book, one of the key things that you speak about is not only the changing nature of the organization, but the changing roles that are going to be within the organization. And this I thought was particularly interesting. And I wonder if you can talk to that a little bit more. In particular, what are these new roles and skill sets that people are going to be expected to occupy with this changing wave of digitization?
In client, so it's an interesting journey. If a client hasn't started either agile or a digital transformation with a different set of roles, like a product manager, or an analytic transformation with a data scientist or data science translator, the implications is that you have to connect this back to the business. The most important part of this is you just don't do this to it's not an experiment. The reality is you want to make your business more successful and customers ultimately happier to want to engage your product. So as you go through this transformation, the roles that are digitally focused roles, because there really isn't an offline equivalent, are different. They're just different. And because they're different, you haven't been practicing in working out your muscles to become a product manager for 25 prior years, and then now you have the digital transformation. You don't have the right setup mentally or with skills. So it takes time to build that internally or acquire it externally. But the skills to do a digital business are distinctly different than a traditional offline business. It doesn't mean they can't work, the teams shouldn't work well together. It just means that they're a different set of skills. And it's one where companies really, going back to people and culture, it's super important. Like, this is probably repeatedly, like, there's one client in my own experience of the inability to hire externally at times. How do you maximize the team you have? Because that's what you got. And you have to make them successful. Otherwise, the business can't be successful. And so helping transition people who spent 20 years doing something very different, most cases they find it rewarding and reinvigorating.
One of the key issues in presenting new ideas and big picture ideas is that sometimes we encounter pushback, particularly from people that have been in their positions for quite a long time and have to learn brand new skill sets. What's your response to that kind of pushback, or people that might encounter that when they start to implement your ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to hide the implications. It's hard. Doing something very different after a lot of years doing something one way, change is hard, and the implication of change is that until it's easier, you have to invest in have an open mindset, a growth mindset. It's just hard, and when there's pushback, these are where the moments where companies can say, this is an experiment. Yeah, we're okay. We'll do it the old way, but applying it towards digital, and it's impractical to have a high ambition then. Just impractical. I mean, if you look at the digital native companies, this is how they behave already. So it's not that you're competing only with them, but the reality is that they're also competing for the talent that you also need. So unless you embrace the talent change to the new world, the reality is that you just get further behind. So those moments of of reflection it's not easy. But without being deliberate and this is the new world, the new way, and being committed, it's hard, and it really needs to come from the top down.
I think for my part, having read the book, the overriding feeling that I had was not one of despondency or that that technology is going to come and take our jobs, but it felt much more that what you were trying to convey is a sense of autonomy, especially for teams. That what you're actually trying to do is to give back autonomy and responsibility for other teams. So it's much more of an empowering message within the book.
The most fun I have is taking a group of people who have never done this before, putting them together in over 4 weeks and launching Agile with them, watching what happens when the right set of experiments, A/B testing, when we've prioritized the activities that they're going to do to drive the most impact quickly. In 2 to 4 weeks, when they have that aha moment that their contributions were actually, they can see it's valued and was not possible before, some of the biggest converts and advocates for doing this becomes the people who have been there 15, 20, 25 years. So the most fun I have is watching people reinvigorate their careers in the first 4 to 6 weeks, because it is so uplifting.
And it really does take that short amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, the initial catalyst is, if done right. Now it can take 4 to 6 months, it can take 4 to 6 years if done not right. But if done right, very quickly can you start transitioning people from an old way of working to a new way of working. But the biggest ingredient of the recipe is open-mindedness. So
Arun, where can people find out more about you and your work, and more importantly, buy the book?
I think 2 places, certainly McKinsey.com. And then, this feels terribly self-promotional, but the book is available for pre-order now on Amazon, and then February it'll be available for purchase and delivery. But I think those are probably, first and foremost McKinsey, and then if it's the book that people are interested, Amazon would be the right next place, because it's exclusively on Amazon as our publishing partner.
Well, Arun, thank you so much for spending time with us today. It's been really fascinating, not just listening about the book, but also listening to someone who actually is on the ground and interacting with people and helping to implement this digital transformation. So thank you for your time and your wisdom.
And thank you for having me. Thank you.